what's up, it's your boy Rawk. Video game companies are constantly trying to innovate when it comes to control methods. Ever since the Wii, PS3 and Xbox 360 generation, it seems like these companies have been experimenting non-stop with new ways to control and interact with their games. Personally, I don't understand this. The perfect controller already exists. People are just too cowardly to admit it. As if playing Call of Duty wasn't loud enough already, try adding bongos into the mix.
I f***ed your dad last night and it sounded a lot like this, you little bitch!
The video game controller is the one constant of the video game industry, by which I mean it is constantly different. Every generation sees all console manufacturers releasing one or more brand new controllers, each designed to comfortably house all of the inputs for modern games. Sometimes a new controller can be simple and safe, like Sony releasing the PS1 dual-stick controller for the 3rd generation in a row. But this time, the square button is pressure sensitive! And other times, it can be Nintendo experimenting with recreational drugs for 4 generations in a row. But in a lot of these cases, if whatever plastic heap the console comes with isn't really doing much for you, there are often alternatives that the company provides that are compatible with most, if not all of the games you're looking to play. If the Switch's Joy-Cons aren't making you happy, then you can always fall back on the Pro Controller. If the Wii Remote breaks your heart, you could always rebound with the Classic Controller or Classic Controller Pro. And if the GameCube controller isn't making you feel fulfilled, then you always have the option to make God horny. The Donkey Kong Bongo is one of the most interesting accessories Nintendo has ever released, outside of Rob the Robot and the Wii Vitality Sensor. And that's saying a lot because one of those didn't even release. These damn bongos are a fascinating part of Nintendo's history, having one of the lowest number of compatible games of any controller to ever be released, purely because, well, look at it. Do you want to play Super Mario Sunshine with this? Technically speaking, this controller can be used for any game that the GameCube controller can be used for. You want to play Super Monkey Ball with this thing? Knock yourself out! You want to play Eternal Darkness with it? More power to ya! You want to play Super Smash Brothers with it? You always have to take things too far, don't you? But of course, this controller was made for a very specific subset of games. The Donkey Kong Bongo games, starting with Donkey Konga on October 15th, 2004 here in the UK. Donkey Konga is a rhythm game that sees you smacking the bongo to the beat of over 30 songs from a wide variety of sources, such as Nintendo games, classical music, and pop songs, among many others. This game is a really good way to get a grip of how playing a game like a musically inclined monkey actually works, by being one of the most simple to control forms of gaming out there. You just tap the bongo the way the game asks you to, and realize you'll never live up to the potential your parents see in you. Now, in order to play this game, or really any game with these damn things, you're gonna want a surface to put them on. Setting them on a desk or something does work, but was less than ideal in my experience. And if you hold them like a normal controller, you're clearly not grasping just what the f is going on here. If, like me, you have a fold-away table like this that you want to use, don't. Which leaves us with simply resting the bongos in your lap, which I was able to find the most success with. So now that we have a suitable surface, let's play Donkey Konga.
I'm a shooting star leaping through the sky like a tiger.
Let's not play Donkey Konga. This game is fucking weird. A rhythm game was obviously the most logical thing to do with this freak of nature, and yeah, controlling this game by smacking the bongos works about as well as you'd expect it to. But the framework around that gameplay is bizarre. 30 songs, alright, that sounds like a decent number, until you realize 7 of them are from Nintendo games, and the others are a complete gamble on whether or not they actually work well in a game like this. I only recognized like 2, maybe 3 of the songs from this track list, which, to be fair to Donkey Konga, might say more about me than it does about its track list. For all of the lyrical songs, the cover bands used are pretty solid in my opinion, and tricked me into thinking they were the original singers a number of times. Again, that probably says more about my ignorance than their skill. Almost all of the Nintendo songs are ripped right out of Super Smash Bros. Melee, with the exceptions of the Donkey Konga main theme and the Legend of Zelda main theme, which, weirdly enough, is a completely original remix. No idea why. My main problem with this song selection, though, is that not all of these songs feel great when translated into a rhythm game. Sometimes the timing of the beats feel really arbitrary, and they don't really feel like they fit what I'm actually listening to. Now, some of this may have to do with the fact that I'm playing on a modern TV, meaning there's a teeny bit of input lag. But even when I was getting grades on a lot of the beats in a song, it still felt off more often than I would have liked. But who gives a shit? Playing a rhythm game with bongos rules. When playing a song, there are only 4 inputs, being left drum, right drum, both drums, and a clap, being picked up by the bongo's microphone. That may seem pitifully limiting compared to the likes of Guitar Hero, but at least for me, this was still wicked amounts of fun. Especially on higher difficulties, frantically smacking this damn thing to the rhythm of a song I either loved or had never heard of was really fun. Chaotic as all hell? Yes, but unbelievably enjoyable. There's not a lot to do in this game, with all of the modes basically being the same damn thing, but for a rhythm game, that's kind of to be expected. It's the type of game you're supposed to have an hour or so of fun with, and then buy the sequel. Donkey Konga 2! Because Nintendo couldn't possibly make Donkey Kong play Earth, Wind & Fire September and not make a sequel. True to all rhythm game sequels, Donkey Konga 2 is the same game again, but with a slightly different track list and being an objectively worse game. Yeah, I'm not as big a fan of this one, which may be a statement that would fucking befuddle the jury, because at its core, you can add as many numbers to this title as you want. That ain't gonna make this any less the same damn thing as the original. For me personally, I didn't find the song list here to be as good as the original, which, yes, even baffles me because there's so much more variety here. I don't know. I think the Smash Mouth cover band pissed me off with their rendition of All-Star, and you can bet I'm holding that against this game hard. This game is also lacking the mini-games you could play in the original, which... I mean, I never really played them in Donkey Konga 1, so it's not a huge deal. But if you were a die-hard fan of Bash K. Rool, I'm always here if you need someone to talk to. One thing I do really appreciate with Donkey Konga 2 is the variety of backgrounds on offer. In the original, you basically only had jungle.jpg, raining jungle.jpg, not a jungle.jpg. Whereas in Donkey Konga 2, we have much more fully fleshed environments. It doesn't really matter all that much, seeing as you're obviously going to be more focused on the notes you need to hit, but it's a nice detail that I'm thankful for. This game also has a mode that lets you do this. I think I actually prefer this game to the original. But what if, wild concept alert, the rhythm games weren't doing much for you and you wanted something a bit more stimulating and a bit more fun to do with the bongos? Well, for starters, you could invest in some actual bongos and start using them for their actual purpose, or you could act on the idea that you drunkenly wrote down at 3 in the morning.
That one sounds a lot more fulfilling.
Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, released on February 4th, 2005 here in the UK, and was the first game developed by Nintendo EAD Tokyo, a subdivision of the company best known for creating games like Mario Kart DS and Super Mario Galaxy. The project was put into development not too long after Microsoft acquired Rareware, the company we have to thank for the Donkey Kong we all know and love today. There hadn't been a new traditional Donkey Kong game since Donkey Kong 64 in 1999, and with Rareware no longer able to develop games in the series, Nintendo decided to take matters into their own hands. No familiar characters, no familiar gameplay elements, keep the platforming, and add bongos. That's how we make a new Donkey Kong game, damn it! Yup, Donkey Kong Jungle Beat is a 2D platformer, made by the team behind Super Mario Galaxy, that sees you using bongos to control the main character. Now, of course, you may be wondering, why the hell did Nintendo decide to make a platformer for the goddamn bongo controller? You may also be asking, what kind of box did the bongos come in? Well, I can answer one of those questions.
There were two ways to buy the Donkey Kong Bongo games. You could either buy them on their own, like you would any other GameCube game, or you could buy them alongside the Bongos. Each of the compatible games were bundled in with the Bongos, and I personally got my pair with Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. They all came in this big-ass box with a unique cardboard sleeve depending on which game you got the Bongos with. And if you take away that sleeve, we're left with a box for the Bongos themselves. Now, I believe the Bongos could be bought separately, which is why they have a standalone box, but I really can't imagine many people bought them separately. I must have a second pair! Whichever game you got in this big box also has an emblem on the spine of the case, at least in PAL regions, which theoretically means that I won't have a complete PAL collection of these games until I hunt down the emblemed versions of Donkey Konga 1 and 2. So you'll have to remind me to give enough of a shit to do that later on, because I just can't bring myself to right now. Anyway, Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. How the hell does this game work? Well, it's pretty simple, which you really should expect from a controller with only 5 input methods. You tap the left drum to move left and the right drum to move right. The faster you do so, the faster Donkey Kong will move. You tap both drums at the same time to jump, and you clap to make Donkey Kong, well, clap. And that's it! Congratulations! You've successfully made a better platformer than Chibi Robo Ziplash. This game is honestly really damn good. The level designs are obviously a bit simplistic compared to a more traditional platforming game, but what we have here is still really damn good. It honestly baffles me how good this game feels to play, because by all accounts, it shouldn't feel good to play. People threw a hissy fit about the motion controls in New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Bitch, try moving your hands the same amount for every single goddamn action in the game. I wouldn't go as far as saying this is a natural feeling control scheme, but I would go as far as saying it feels really good. The gameplay here is tailor-made for this controller, and is designed perfectly within its limitations. This does admittedly lead to a really low difficulty, especially when you've gotten used to using the Bongos. But I actually think that works to the game's benefit, because I cannot imagine the stages of grief I'd go through trying to play fucking Celeste on these things. Also, I weirdly think this game works better as a rhythm game than Donkey Konga does. Hear me out. You can earn points throughout the game's levels by collecting bananas and defeating enemies, and the amount of points you get dictates what medal you get on each of the game's levels. But what the game doesn't tell you right away is that playing these stages like typical platforming stages is the wrong way to do it. Clapping is your best friend in this game, as it allows you to collect all of the bananas in a certain radius around you in one swift move, which allows you to gain more points than by simply collecting them one by one. In tandem with this, collecting bananas whilst not touching the ground allows you to rack up a combo, which is the best way to score wicked amounts of points. This turns every level into an elaborate game of mastering when and where to clap for maximum banana collection, the best methods of staying airborne in order to maximize your combos. It's really good fun and gives the game a certain rhythm to it in a really natural feeling way. It's obviously not the best platformer you'll ever play, but Donkey Kong Jungle Beat is a damn solid time, even if it fucking kills your hands to play. Have you ever found yourself looking at Donkey Konga 2 and thinking to yourself, God, I need more of this?
Every second of my goddamn life.
Well, if you live in Japan, you're welcome! And if you don't live in Japan, well, maybe you should have thought about the consequences of your actions. Donkey Konga 3, released on March 17th, 2005, exclusively in Japan, and holds the title of my first ever Japanese GameCube import, because it was the first one I pulled out of the box. Yeah, I figured if I was gonna buy one of these games from Japan, I might as well buy them all. And the rumors are true, Japanese GameCube games are fucking weird. My Japanese game collection is slowly but surely growing. Maybe one day soon I'll actually take the time to learn Japanese in order to understand these games properly.
Or I could play Donkey Konga 2 again.
Donkey Konga 1 and 2 actually feature pretty drastically different track lists depending on which region you're playing in. And I think generally speaking, Japan has the best selection, the US has the worst selection, and Europe has a selection. The Japanese versions of these games feature a lot of anime themes, which I think is really cool. And they definitely feature a better range of Nintendo songs. I mean, come on! Donkey Konga 1 has E no Uta from Pikmin, whereas the US version has what? A Happy Birthday cover? But back to Donkey Konga 3. This game... well, it's Donkey Konga 3. After already talking about the first two games, there's really not a whole lot left to say about this game. It really is just another Donkey Konga game, with a different track list, slightly different environments to look at, and the addition of Funky Kong as a playable character in the multiplayer modes. So it's the best game in the series. This game actually has almost 60 songs, compared to the roughly 30 the first two games each had. And there's a decent amount of variety in the track list here, even going as far as to include a couple of nursery rhymes.
Yeah! In a game called Donkey Konga 3! That's fucked up!
And that is all of the games that are compatible with the Donkey Kong bongos. But it almost wasn't. Because after these 4 titles released, yet another game was put into development with the bongos as the primary selling point, being Donkey Kong Bongo Blast, a racing game that would see you using the bongos to accelerate and steer. The game was initially put into development for the GameCube, and even received a gameplay trailer, but eventually, the bongo support was scrapped, and the game was reworked for the Wii as Donkey Kong Jet Race. What the f*** is this game's problem? Look, I get having the primary control method being the Wii remotes. After all, their motion controls were what made people care about this vanilla slab. But the motion controls here just mimic the hand movements you'd be doing with the bongos. But they don't even let you use the fucking bongos. It's not even an option. And they were the whole reason this game existed in the first place. So you know what? Fine. If you don't want to be a Donkey Kong Bongo game, then I don't want you to be a Donkey Kong Bongo game. I hope you feel content knowing you're a piece of shit.
The Donkey Kong Bongo games are such a fascinating part of the GameCube's library, and to me, are the most definitively Nintendo experiences that the system has to offer. They took a concept that had absolutely no business existing, and crafted some lovingly made and downright fun games centered around it. They aren't the greatest games you're ever gonna play, and they don't really offer much in terms of longevity, but for the relatively short time you'll end up playing them for, you'll have a really great time. Each of them made really good use of the controller, and while all of them can be played using the bog standard GameCube controller, it's not even close to being as fun this way. They managed to make the simple act of using this controller a really fun time, and that makes these games ones that I'll look back on fondly. They aren't perfect, and they sure as hell aren't necessary, but they're a really fun time. But I just cannot get over the fact that Donkey Kong Jet Race doesn't use these damn bongos. So, I took it upon myself to tape my Wii Remote and Nunchuck to my hands, so that way, I can play this game with the bongos.
Oh my god, it's still a piece of shit.